Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we're going to be talking about a topic that's kind of paramount to me right now, having your dad die past 3 years ago. And we're going to talk about finding your life after loss and how you do find it after you've had a profound loss. And we have got a great guest on today. She's written a really wonderful book, Caregiver's Journey Through Alzheimer's, which is so well written and has so many great thoughts. So I'm going to be interested to hear about her journey.
Okay, Mom. So we're talking today with Ilana Rowe. Ilana is an educator, a writer, and course designer in the field of transpersonal psychology. And as you said, Mom, she wrote the memoir Sacred Stories, A Caregiver's Journey Through Alzheimer's, which chronicles her 11-year journey supporting her husband through Alzheimer's. Welcome to the show, Ilana.
Thank you for having me on.
So it's great having you on. And as I said, your journey is so poignant. And one of the things that I thought about in carrying somebody through Alzheimer's, when they do pass away, it's got to be quite an adjustment, I would think.
Well, with Alzheimer's, it becomes a little different. You grieve along the way, and you're grieving at every stage, and it's so such a difficult journey, as many journeys are, that when he finally died, there was an adjustment of, oh, he's no longer suffering. Oh, I will miss him terribly, but you've been grieving all along. It's not like you don't know when he died in a way. Physically, he died, but before that, there were so many parts of him that died along the way. So the adjustment is a different process. It was a different process for me anyway. It became a very big adjustment before he died, and then after he died, there was first a relief, and then there was an adjustment. And
I think that's the way it is for a lot of people who have been taking care of terminally ill people. Also, there is that relief, that immediate relief, and then it sets in that you got to do your life now by yourself.
So the question is, how did I adjust? I was grateful to have some work, something meaningful to me at the moment. It could have been a volunteer thing or whatever, but I had something, and I continued that because I knew without that for me, it would be very difficult, even though it was difficult negotiating both. I live in a condo where we are a community. So I had a lot of access to people who I could just walk out the door and say hello. Also, I had a dog, and a dog, his name is Oliver. He shows up in the book a lot. Well, he's now a service dog. He was so helpful, having a sense of touching another and having somebody to talk to, and a little dog talk. That was really, really helpful.
What I'm hearing is that what helped you is having structure with your work, having a community, and having a dog after your husband died.
But you'd sort of prepared for this. I mean, you knew that you kept working all the way through. So you had this going. You had a dog before he died. I'll have to say one thing about dogs. Be careful about getting puppies when you're in grief.
Right.
I mean, puppies are a lot of work, and you may want to get an adult dog if you even want a dog. But I'll have to say this, once you get into the single world of dating, if you decide to do that or going out, you've got a dog that you have to be home for.
Exactly.
And, you can't go to maybe a spontaneous party, maybe not even dating, but just having friends invite you for a weekend. If you've just gotten a dog and you've never had a dog before, now you've got to find doggy daycare and all that because you're going to have this companion that's going to be with you.
I'm just wondering for both of you, because you're both widows and you both had this loss, what is unique about losing a spouse?
He was the love of my life, and we were together 30 years. And I mean,
Mhm.
even today, every once in a while, I still cry. But he's been physically gone 4 years, like a little over 4 years. The second year was actually harder for me than the first year.
Mhm.
For me, it just became, it really started really hitting home. The first year there was like, oh, there was that relief period of he's not suffering anymore, and your life got simpler. But the second year, I think for a lot of people who lose in a different way, the
Mhm.
second year for me was like probably the first year for a lot of people, where it just wrenches at your heart. He had taken care of me when I was very ill, and suddenly I was
Mhm.
taking care of him. And then when he was gone, it became, that was, I think the edge for me was, okay, how do I live without taking care of another person too, and without
Yeah,
them
yeah.
here? It went both ways. But I find myself automatically helping those who may need my help. That helps me too.
For me, I have to harken back 40 years ago when my 17-year-old son was killed in an automobile accident with my
Yeah.
nephew. They hit a wall, the car blew up, and they burned to death. It was very
Oh,
traumatic. At the time, I was an expert in grief and loss, so I thought, taught at the University of Rochester, was a clinical nurse specialist to the surgical service, did a lot of grief and loss training with the nurses, and worked on a burn unit. I mean, I don't want to say God prepares you, but I certainly was right in the midst of what I had happen. And as when my husband had had some health issues, he didn't have Alzheimer's, but he'd had some surgeries. So he almost died 2 years before. And I'll have to say at that time, I think it is some brain chemistry also. I really believe in that it's not just thinking, because I thought I will never, ever go to that place again where I went with Scott.
Mhm.
I cannot do it again. I will not do it again. I know two things that I learned from that. I will survive. I'm not going to die, and I will be happy again. It's a
Especially,
couple's world.
it's a couple's world. Well, that's a good point. Alana's agreeing with that.
I totally agree with that. It's, even in this condo, if you're not part of a couple, it's a different place. That was hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
makes sense. And I would think y'all, got together as couples with people. And then when you lose your partner, all of a sudden it's like, okay, I would think some people might still, invite you to couples things, but I would think others may not, or you might not feel comfortable. It would be so some identity, I would think, loss about who am I now?
And I actually talked to some of my couple friends and said, hey, I feel kind of isolated as a single person in this
Mm.
community where it's a couple's world. And
Mhm.
they said, we will take you in. You can come with us anytime. And it became really wonderful because to be taken in and to be nurtured.
Sometimes we assume that people know what we need and that they're
Right.
psychic. And some
Mhm.
people are great grief support, but you both know some people aren't, or they just don't know. And so I love, Ilana, that you said, hey, you can include me in things. I want to be included. I still want to be, doing things with you. What advice would you both have for somebody right now that is struggling, has lost their spouse, and is, trying to figure out how to find hope again?
There's a lot of research done on widows, and I
Mm-hmm.
was aware of that a lot. And what the trajectory basically, to let you know, the first year you're kind of frozen trying to get through the tasks. The second year you say, this is going to be my life. And the third year you say, okay, this is going to be my life. And the fourth year is a more settling in. So I don't know. I think patience with yourself and love and trying to take care of yourself, particularly physically, I think is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
Those are really good points that I totally agree with. I think another thing is maybe not the first year when you're still, like you said, kind of in shock, is to remember what has moved you, what you love, and find ways to connect with people who also love those things. For me, it was poetry. So I began to find people in Sarasota who love poetry. And so finding the things that you love, and just for me, I had to kind of force myself to get out there, and do that by myself for a while.
Well, somebody told me say yes, whether you don't feel like it or not. Say yes.
I know. Yeah. I mean, that's the big thing, what you said about whether you feel like it or not, because I know that it's really hard to feel like it sometimes when you're still kind of grieving. But if you do, then you get there and you have a good time. But it's that step. So I really appreciate what you said.
I'm wondering if you got the same support as other widows, because was there some kind of a thought, well, your husband died of Alzheimer's, so you must be relieved and you must not be grieving. I don't know if that was there or not.
I had a lot of support before he died. I spent 4 years when I came to Sarasota in the caregivers group, which gave me the support. And I kept trying to get to the grief group, and they wouldn't let me in because he hadn't quite died. But I knew I was going through a huge anticipatory grief. When he died, I felt like, well, I'm not going to ask for the grief support because I had felt so much anticipatory grief. But I went through, spiritual support, groups that did things together. They knew that I was grieving. My friend who lost a husband to Parkinson's the next year, 2 years later, she said, the first year I get a pass.
Right.
So, and that was good. And I supported her in her pass. The second year was, no, you don't get a pass. It was like, it became giving yourself and giving other people permission. So you're going to say funny things, or you're going to do things that you might not have done before or after.
Well, tell us where people can get your book, and do you have a website? And
I actually have a website, but here's my book. And you can get it at Amazon. Sacred Stories, a caregiver's journey through Alzheimer's.
And thank you for being on our show today. It's great to meet you. And thank you for being my daughter's advisor at Sophia University. Very cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Ilana. Thank you for bringing hope to so many with your story.
And we want to thank everybody for joining us on the show today. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.